Religious and linguistic groupings, as well as case affiliation, reinforce popular notions of descent in India. Each of the dozen or so major linguistic groups has a homeland within the country. And in fact, the states that make up the Indian Union consist essentially of people who speak the same language and share a common history. The territorial concentration of language groups gives a particular edge to regionalism in India. I am TB Wahid, Black Living Room Talk. How are you? I hope all is well with you today as I am continuing to read Race and Descent as Social Categories in India by Andre Patel. And it started about talking about the religions, and so now it's talking about the religions and the linguistics, the languages, the divisions, the territorials. And I've been doing further reading outside of the book and just listening to different various things which coincide with what's going on today in this place in which we live. But there's a lot of similarities with what has happened and continues to happen in this place in which this book talks about. But it's like you have to just really listen and go back and follow along. I don't really want to mix it up because I could go back and forth between the other book that I started with, but I plan on bringing that back from where I started from sometime soon. But I want to continue with this. I'm not going to be long with this because I want to talk about something else, and so that means that I'll be coming back on today sometime. But let me finish with this here. So, cutting across the linguistic divisions, and in many ways just as important socially, are groupings based on religious affiliation. Groupings. Although the Hindus constitute over 80% of the population, there are important Muslim and Christian minorities in several regions. The concentration of people following a certain religious faith in a particular social stratum or region helps to sharpen their social identity. In East Bengal, now East Pakistan, prior to the partition of India, the Hindu-Muslim conflict was greatly accentuated because the Hindus owned most of the land while the bulk of the Muslims tilled it. Again, the fact that the Sikhs not only speak a common language, but are also concentrated in a particular territory has made the basis of a demand for a separate state, which has recently been conceded. Although units based on regional, linguistic, sectarian, caste, or lineage affiliation have played a very important part in traditional Indian society and continue to do so today. They do not exhaust the types of groups in modern Indian society. Universalistic groups, such as those based on affiliation to classes, parties, or trade unions, exist but have, by their nature, little to do with race or descent. No significant social unit in India, whether based on language, religion, or caste, is racially homogeneous. It is more common for physical and social differences to intersect than to overlap. Studies by P.C. Mahalanobis, C.R. Rao, D.N. Majumdar, S.S Sarkar, and others have shown how complex the racial pattern may be even in a limited region or sector of society. Sarkar has demonstrated that even tribal groups, generally assumed to be homogeneous, show a great deal of internal variation when examined anthropometrically and serologically. There is also a wide range of diversity in the distribution of physical types. Whichever trait one considers, whether skin color, stature, nasal index, or head form, one encounters a very broad spectrum in which almost every variation is represented. In general, physical types are not sharply differentiated, but represented on a continuum. Nowhere are the somatic differences between language groups, religious communities, or castes so sharp as the differences between Negroes and whites in the United States. Along with diversity, there is a relative absence of polarity. The high degree of overlap between adjacent segments and the absence of polarity go a long way in explaining why there has been little or no organized conflict between racial groups in Indian society. I want to read that again. The high degree of overlap between adjacent segments and the absence of polarity go a long way in explaining why there has been little or no organized conflict between racial groups in Indian society. In spite of the rigid rules of endogamy, no meaningful social unit can be readily identified by its physical characteristics. Clear physical types do not exist in India in the shape of concrete groups as they do in the United States or South Africa. They are rather constructs that enable anthropologists to order their data. Knowledge of racial differences and their distribution in India is consequently very limited. The anthropometric and serological data available do not permit one to present a racial map of the country with any confidence. Sir Herbert Risley, under whom the 1901 census of India was conducted, made the first systematic attempt to classify the population by race. In his classification, Risley tried to relate certain physical differences, in particular those pertaining to the shape of the nose and skin color, to certain basic features of social stratification. The main racial types in his scheme of classification are Yan Dravidian, Aryo Dravidian, Mongolo Dravidian, were really linguistic or regional categories in disguise. Risley's classification was criticized in part because of his failure to distinguish clearly between physical and social categories. Several classifications have been offered since, and of these, B.S. Guha's seems to be the most popular. Guha identified 6 principal racial elements in the population of India: Negrito, Proto-Australoid, Mediterranean, Western Brachycephal, Paleo-Mongoloid, and Nordic, the first and last occurring only in very diluted forms, if at all. Only the Proto-Australoid and Paleo-Mongoloid groups have any real correspondence with social divisions in the country. The first being well represented in the Aboriginal population of central and southern India, and the second in the people of Assam and the Himalayan foothills. The Mediterranean and Western brachycephal types are too broad and general to have any close connection with real social divisions. So, So we know that there are sharp physical differences, and it says that may exist in India, but such differences are rarely found between territorially or structurally adjacent sections of the population. So that's what we're going to get in to talk about Indians' color problems and community in the next reading. So I guess I'm going to be kind of sort of taking my time with this one because as you see, it talked about how we have Negrito, and I knew that was going to be in there, Negrito, the Mongoloid, the Australoid, and because I've also would have read about the presence of, and this is what I'm talking about that I've read, getting away from a little bit. This is what I'm saying. My comments outside of the reading. I had read in the S.S magazine. I can't remember the author's name, where he talked about how he discovered the presence of Africans in China and Japan. And I'm going to have to try to find that article because he did say where they were. And he did have a communication with them. And he did explain the name that they called them too. So I want to find my article and share that with you as well. So we know that the African has had his foot everywhere before the Americas. He's been in the Americas. He traveled to the Americas from where he was before anyone. So we're going to get off into that too. I don't know how long that's going to take when I do it, but nevertheless, I'm going to do it. But this is another great reading, informational reading, study reading. And what I want to do is that word. I want to study that word serologically too, to get a better understanding of it. So I hope everyone has a beautiful day today. It is a Saturday. I'm finding that is one of my best times to get in some reading. And I will notify as I come back on sometime today. So please enjoy your day today. And I hope it's not very cold where you are. It's giving us a little break where I am at. I want to wish you peace, love, and light. Peace and love.